Hello everyone, I'm Rishi Persad and welcome back to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Delighted to have two people who are going to keep things simple for me because they're both called Steve. In his usual position, Steve Ryder. To my right is Steve Mellish, previous guest on the show. Steve, welcome back.
Thank you.
How have you enjoyed the post-Christmas National Hunt season thus far?
I've enjoyed it. We lost the meetings at the beginning, so that was frustrating. But I think from Trials Day onwards, which I thought was really informative, through to the Dublin Festival, I think you've had tons of clues coming up for the big meeting. And it's been really good. The last couple of weeks have been really good.
Well, speaking of the Dublin Racing Festival, I know one person on this panel who has been there. How much did you enjoy it? What did you make of it?
Yeah, I thought it was a really, really good meeting to go to. Lots of racing fans there. It was absolutely rammed on the Saturday. Good racing, lots of performances that will impact the Cheltenham Festival. Yeah.
Well, one thing that obviously a lot of people have spoken about, lack of competition in a fair few races. You were saying that you went with one member of your crew who perhaps wasn't as into racing as some of you. How did they find the setup of some of the races?
Yeah, so there was 8 of us and one of them is just kind of tagged along to have a few Guinness. And he actually mentioned to me on his own back and said, some of these races are a bit strange with 2, 3, 4 runners, and I'm not going to back the favourite because it's such a short price. Like, what should I do? And I kind of said, well, stand here and enjoy a horse like El Fabiolo and State Man winning impressively. But he didn't seem too keen to do that.
Yeah, I suppose it's hard for newcomers or people who don't get into it to just observe. They want to have a bet. They want to win some money. Mm-hmm. One thing we always ask our guests to do, Steve, is to try and pick a horse that has created a big impression so far, that maybe for the remainder of the season or for the future, one that's done that for you.
The bird has flown price-wise, but I was ever so impressed with Sir Gino in the juveniles trial at Cheltenham. I thought it was a tremendous performance, and I would have it as one of the best juvenile hurdlers we've seen in the last 20-odd years. I think I think he did everything perfectly that day, and I really liked that he'd learnt so much from his debut. He was less novice at his jumps, travelled like a dream, and I think if you watch the jockey's body language through the race, I think it's really telling. He knew the main danger, Burdett Road, or main danger on betting, was going to be held up for a late run, and a potent late run. At no time did James Bowen look behind to see how something else was going. He was absolutely exuding confidence. And I love the way he settled it, and I love the way as he crossed the line, he finished full of running. It's the second time he's done that. I think only good horses do that.
Yeah, definitely. You're not the only one to have spoken about him in such glowing terms. Sir Gino, a name obviously that we expect to hear a lot about for the remainder of the season and hopefully in years to come. It has been a tough week for the sport of horse racing, and everyone here on Racing Weekly would like to send their deepest condolences to the family and friends of Keagan Kirkby, who was also a part of the Paul Nicholls team, a point-to-point rider who passed away on the weekend. Obviously devastating for his friends and family. The Paul Nicholls team had lost Hermes Allen the day before, so it's been a very, very tough time for them. So from everybody here on Racing Weekly, we send our deepest condolences and we certainly have them in our thoughts. Time to move on though to this week's Racing Recap. Right, we start this week's Racing Recap in the obvious place, the Dublin Racing Festival, and the very first race certainly set the tone for a very good day for Willie and Danny Mullins, Steve. What did you make of Dancing City's performance, considering his price and where he fit in with a few others in the race from the stable?
I didn't think there was any fluke about it. One of many really good rides by Danny Mullins. I formed the opinion he was a stayer. I know he got quote for the Birmingham and the Albert Bartlett. I must not see him more. I think I see him as more of an Albert Bartlett. I thought he won basically by staying. I thought they were trying to hold on to President's Gold a bit, and I thought they'd run the finish out with him. I thought it was a good, really thoroughly decent performance without blowing you away.
Okay, you were there. Obviously, it caught one or two people by surprise who followed other horses from the Mullins team. What did you think of it?
I thought it was an interesting race. Like, Predator's Gold was just a bit keen, stepping back up in trip. Didn't do himself any favours. I thought it was a brilliant ride from Danny Mullins because Jatara was really keen throughout the race. And I think Danny spotted that Rachel was kind of struggling to hold her back and kind of went, I'm not going to battle you for the lead. Off you go. And obviously she had a bit of a tack problem later on.
Yeah.
I was a little bit disappointed with it. She was always going to be vulnerable to a top class performance. So a Predator's Gold or a Lachlan who jumped terribly.
Awful. Yeah.
Absolutely terribly. So she was vulnerable and she has a ceiling. And then I watched it back when I got back from Ireland, and I thought, actually, you've stayed on better than than I thought you would. But the winner there was, like Steve said, there's no fluke around it. He'd go on any ground. And he had the form in the book, to be fair. If you excuse his reappearance run, which you can do, because a few of Willie's needed the run at that stage, including Ballyburn. If you look back at it, he finished second to Ballyburn in a Punchestown in a bumper, and then won a maiden hurdle by 4.5 lengths. So he probably was a big price in hindsight. Yeah, I thought it was a nice performance, and all roads lead to the Albert Bartlett.
Yeah, I made a note that I thought Jatara actually didn't do badly in the circumstances, considering what Steve mentioned about how keen she was. Rachel lost her iron at some point during the race as well. And when they turned into the straight, I thought she was going to back away, but she actually stuck on quite nicely, thinking of what her chances would be in, obviously, against her own sex at the festival. I thought she wouldn't be the most ridiculous bet.
No, I can see that. She needs to settle better.
Yeah.
It was slightly worrying, but I agree. I thought she showed a good attitude. She could, as you say, drop right away. I don't think she ran to her best, her form. Therefore, I found it a hard race, one or two of the races, but I found it hard to get an exact handle. Steve made the point the Predator's Gold had been keen, which I agree with, and I thought they were riding him to get the trip again in good company. So what the actual form is worth, I'm not sure. Other than I think the stayer just looks the winner looks a likeable stayer, a very straightforward horse.
9-1, non-runner no bet with Bet365 for the Albert Bartlett. So you can understand why he's an attractive proposition. You touched on the Spring Juvenile Hurdle. You mentioned Cargaze, who I've loved this horse's attitude, and she has got the sort of attitude you want, especially when it comes to the big meetings where slightly bigger fields, real properly run races. That's what I thought was the most important thing to take from her. Yeah,
it's almost certainly a really good performance. It's hard to have a handle. There were any number of once raced Willie Mullins horses who won their maidens in good style, and Gordon Elliott had a horse who had pretty good form, and they were the horses that chased her home. And she will get the allowance, the mare's allowance, when she goes for the Triumph Hurdle. So I absolutely see her as being the biggest threat, and I think in an average year she'd have a pretty good chance of winning. I'm not sure exactly what the race was worth, but it's hard to think that all the horses she was beating, some of them aren't pretty good, even though we don't know exactly what their standard is yet. So I was impressed with her. She's a really likeable mare.
She is. We'll talk about her in respect of the Triumph Hurdle in just a moment. But with regards to that performance from her, how impressed with you? Was there something in behind at all that caught your eye? I've got a feeling there is. I
fell in love with the horse, and that was Marshborough. I mentioned him on the show last week, the fact that as a juvenile, he won in France, 300 odd days ago. Like, he needs to run in these juvenile hurdles because he's not going to be a novice next season. He came into the parade ring, he was big, imposing, a real chasing type, not your normal speedy juvenile. I thought he was brilliant.
I was surprised he was ridden so forwardly first time up after...
So was Willie Mullins. By all accounts, I think they were supposed to be making the running on Cargeese, and off Mark Welsh went, but I don't think there was any fluke around either of their performances. If you back Cargeese, there wasn't really a moment's worry throughout the race. She settled better than what she did at Christmas. And she should do, to be fair. She had a fair amount of racing in France before she came over, so she was more experienced. So a horse like Marshborough will be open to more amount of improvement than what she is, but she does remind you of Gala Marceau, who won the race last year as well. If Sir Gino was to scare a lot off from the Triumph Hurdle, which I think he may well do, whether she settles as well in a smaller field on the day would be a slight concern for the winner, if it ends up being sort of 6, 7, 8 runners. But I imagine Willie's going to run 5, 6 or 7 in it. He ran 6 out of the 10 in this, and I think they'll all book their trip from this.
For a 3-all run, won't they?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, they all came out of it with some credit.
Yeah.
They're all lightly raced. They're all open to improvement. I mean, that's the pecking order at the moment. It might be the pecking order, but you wouldn't be absolutely certain, would you?
And they backed Marshborough on the day as well, to be fair. He was well backed, and that was his first run for 300 odd days. So it wouldn't be the biggest shock if he was to reverse form with the winner.
Well, he might certainly turn out to be the best of them from that race. Sir Gino is 4-5 for the Triumph, non-runner no bet with Bet365. Carges is 5-1, Badet Road 8s, Majborough 10s, Salvatore Mundi 10s, Salva 10s. A couple of the Nichols horses, Liari, Caliph de Belay, Peking Opera 20s, etc. How do you see the Triumph hurdle picture? I mean, is it as clear-cut as you suggested very early on? Sir Gino.
Well, it's Sir Gino versus Willie Mullins, I think, is what it is. I definitely take Steve's point that we haven't seen the ultimate ability of the third. I would say the second as well. I thought jumping could be improved slightly. So I do, they're good horses. They're all going to be good horses, and Willie Mullins has won the race several times in the last few years. So they'll go there, and I think they will be the threat en masse to Sir Gino. I'm probably wrong. I don't think Sir Gino is a real cut above horses. I think he's just a very, very good horse. I mean, they've also got the horse who didn't run on Sunday, the horse who chased home Sir Gino in France.
Salvatore Mundi.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened. I mean, he's getting close to Cheltenham, isn't it?
He's also only finished second, so whether they're just going to keep his novice status for next season.
Very possibly, yeah. Very possibly. Yeah.
So if you had to have a tickle in the Triumph, non-runner no bet, or not, where would you go now?
I'd go to the Warren Great Trex chained Mighty Bandit. No, I liked Marlborough. I also am interested in what they do with Mighty Bandit, because you're not a bad horse after that one performance.
Run,
Like, he was brilliant on his debut, and then obviously bled last time. But the fact that Gordon hasn't bought him at the sales would be a concern.
Okay. The Irish Arkle, obviously going into the race, a lot of people thought it was going to be a stroll in the park for Marine Nationale. It didn't turn out to be like that. We made a mistake at the last. It looked a little bit flat to me. But the winner was Etait Temps, who's a pretty smart horse, as we know. Beat Founder 50, Facile Vega in behind. Steve, if we start with you on this one, and tell me about your impression of Marine Nationale, what you made of, was it just you put a line through it? And then is Etait Temps, or perhaps Founder 50, a live Arkle contender for you?
So I think a lot of people are looking back at the race with the benefit of hindsight, because on the day when you were there, people have said, his carriage was a bit high and he was struggling to breathe from an early stage. And there on course, you got absolutely no inkling of that at all. And watching the replay back, I actually didn't think you could either. It looked as if it was going to be business as normal. Michael O'Sullivan cut to the inside and you hear the roar of the crowd, and it was right, here we go, business as normal, and just never went through with it. You would be worried going forward from that performance, and I couldn't dream of backing him even at sort of the 5-2 that he's drifted out with Bet365 for the race. I couldn't believe the SB of Etait Temps when it came up on the big screen. He must have been well back throughout the whole day. To go off 6-1 in that, it was some kind of gamble late on. He didn't have much respect for his hurdles last season, but he's much better over fences. He was obviously involved in that Limerick race with the finger pointing with Patrick Mullins behind Gaelic Warrior. But I thought it was a good performance. Of the beaten horses, Founder 50 is an admirable horse, and he's about a stone better over fences than what he was over hurdles. But you think he's slightly below the top level. Facile Vega just doesn't jump like a 2-miler. He needs to go up and trip. I always think after these races, if you ran this race again tomorrow, who would I want to back? And I'd want to back the winner. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you look back and you think, if this jumped better, it'd probably be able to reverse the form. But I didn't think there was any fluke around it. And the Arkle now looks a bit of a mess. And at 4-1 no run, I bet for the Arkle, I'd be fairly happy with Etait Temps. Yeah,
well, that's his prize. Marine Nationale 5-2. Non-runner no bet with Bet365. Founder 55s, Gaelic Warrior 5s, Hunters, Yarny, Rocco. I mean, Facile Vega is out to 10s. Steve, what's the Arkle picture looking like in your opinion after that race?
Difficult. I mean, disappointing time the race was 2.5 seconds slower than the mare's race. Admittedly, the mare was carrying less weight, but still thought it was a slightly disappointing. I thought it was a hard race. So much was over-expected, I think, of Marine Nationale going into it. I mean, I thought there was odds-on favourite for the Arkle after one win, which is incredible. So I don't know what to make. I couldn't. I wouldn't know what it was. I couldn't back Marine Nationale. The winner probably is the best of them. I think Facile Vega is becoming. Who was the horse we were talking out of here a minute ago? The horse that was going to win everything. What was it called? The
Sandro.
Yeah, it reminds me of I just think this is ludicrously overhyped. I know one of the things. What trip do you want? Irrelevant, I think. I just think he's not as good as they think he is. He might be improved for a trip. I'm not saying he won't, but at the moment he's in my avoid at all costs. He's always well backed, and I think he's been disappointing a few times now.
Enough times now, I think.
Yeah. Enough times, yeah.
Enough times. And
Given he's never a price.
Yeah, and even were he to step up in trip, he's not. You wouldn't want to back him with confidence of stepping up in trip. That's going to be the key to him. So big questions for Facile Vega. Where is he going to go? Well, who knows? He's 6-1 non-runner, no bet for the Turners. Question marks the answer for him. Okay, the Irish Gold Cup, billed really as a race between Galopin Des Champs and Fastorslow. I thought Galopin Des Champs was impressive overall because I thought this was a case of Paul Townend riding a race as soft as he could ahead of the Gold Cup itself at the festival, at Cheltenham Festival. And with that context in mind, I thought it was terrific.
I think he's still. I think he rated 180 going into this race officially. He's probably ran to a mark in the low 120s here if you use a few of the horses involved. And I'm thinking to myself, that's probably still good enough to win the Gold Cup because he gets the trip really well. I think he beat the second further in a truly run 3.25 mile, for example. And then you're looking at the Shishkins of this world, and I'm not sure any of them are capable of a mark in the 170s. And we know Galopin Des Champs with them when he let loose. So yeah, I thought he did. I thought it was a tad workmanlike, but probably for the reasons you gave. It was probably a safety first ride, and he's just got. It's hard to see why he will get beat, isn't it? Do you think?
I cannot see what is closest. I mean, people talk about L'Empresse and Shishkin from the British side of things, and then what's there in Ireland that's better than him? Nothing. Or close to him, not better than him, because obviously he is the best. The Gold Cup market, as far as I can see, Steve, is as good as done. I think Galopin wins.
And now they're riding him properly. There's less chance for things to go wrong. Obviously, he was held up in the race last year, kind of could have been brought down, and now he kind of looks bulletproof. They'll sit second, third, probably behind Hoyce and Euro if he runs. There'll be a few kind of ahead of him, but yeah, he'll have plenty of daylight at his fences. I thought it was a good performance. I really enjoyed it on track. I think it's worth noting Willie Mullins' 13th win in this race. He wouldn't be a huge price to kind of equal Florida Pearl's record of 4 wins in the race, I don't think, because he just keeps coming back. Like there doesn't appear to be a novice coming through that's gonna topple him next year either. They went a bit of a dawdle, but Galopin settled well. He jumped well on the hole. He kind of warms up as he goes round. The first circuit, he always kind of is a bit careful, but his jump at the second last, he absolutely winged it, and then instantly Fastorslow and Conflated are then under pressure. Conflated ran a huge race. Obviously, I think Leopardstown does suit him. Won this race last year, a couple of years ago, in impressive style. I think the most impressive part of the performance, and it didn't quite clock when I was on the course, was what he did after the last. It looked as if Fastorslow was going to make it a good race up to the last. Jumped, and then Paul Townend, with the minimum of fuss, kind of had a look, and away he went. So I couldn't quite believe that it was 4.5 lengths that he won at the end. Fastorslow, what would you do with him? Would you take him back on? I think with his Cheltenham Festival form, Fastorslow, I know Galopin's obviously a 2-time festival winner, unlucky not to be a 3-time festival winner, but Fastorslow has really good festival form as well. I think, and I don't think they'll do it, but it would be interesting if he went for a Ryanair, wouldn't he? I mean, he's 7-2, no runner, no bet with Bet365. So
he's 72 non-runner, no bet for the Ryanair, non-runner, no bet, but he's 9-2 for the Gold Cup, non-runner, no bet.
I much prefer the Ryanair.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad saying that because it's my least favourite race in the world. But I mean, just look at it from his point of view.
Less favourite than the Mare's Chase and the Mare's
on a par with. But for the same reasons. But I think that the trip would suit him much more.
Yeah.
I think he jumps quickly.
Yeah.
He jumps like a sort of middle distance horse. I wanted to briefly go back to Galopin Des Champs. One of the good things about him is that his poorish jumps are all safety first. I quite like that, for longevity. It's not like having a cut at them and making a mistake, which is much more worrying if it goes wrong. Yeah. He's just one who takes in, he just looks after himself a bit. So as much as anything can be in jump race, I think he's pretty likely to get round at the jump in the Gold Cup, Yeah.
Yeah, he's not one that... Like El Fabiola, the whole way round, you'd be worried.
Yeah.
At the fact that oh my God, is he going to fall?
He's got a fall in him, hasn't he, El Fabiano?
Yeah.
Really good though he is.
Yeah.
He's got a fall in him, absolutely.
Yeah. On the topic of the Ryanair chase, I think it's worth going back to Conflated as well. Like, by all accounts, he's going to head to the Ryanair rather than the cross-country chase. So a few anti-post punters will be a bit annoyed at that. But I think it is the right performance because he was right in there towards the final fence. So it was a bit of a soft done seat. But he's got good Cheltenham Festival form as well. It's worth remembering he finished, third in the Gold Cup last year, was going to finish second in the Ryanair the year before, chasing home Allaho when he fell at the second last.
And they sponsored the race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 to 1, no run and no bet for the Ryanair. That's a fair enough price for his ability.
Just looking at the Gold Cup at the moment, so Galopin's 8 to 13, non-run and no bet. Fastorslow 9 to 2, Shishkin 8 to 1, Jerry Colomb 9s, Lompress 9s, Brave Man's Game 14s, Hewick 14s, Corach Rambler 16s, Gentleman's Game 16s, and then 25s bar those. And I think those are the only realistic ones that you mentioned. Rainer Huysen, yours 50s. If you had to have a play in the race, what would you do?
I'd back Galopin.
Yeah, if I had to.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't back anything each way to fill... I mean,
No.
the likeliest... I mean, Corach Rambler, I thought, would get placed in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I can't see him winning, but...
I'd sit next to you and cheer Corach Rambler on for you, Rishi.
That's such a lie. He would never cheer anything on for me. Oh, no, he's not going to make it into the top 3, is what Steve was saying. Bad luck, Rish. That's what his attitude would be.
Not true.
Galopin, hopefully, there'll be a decent-sized field to test him come the Gold Cup, but he is the standout, and he's looked imperious, I think, on his last 2 runs, perhaps less so last time than 2 starts back, but still good enough to win the Gold Cup. Let's move on to Sunday at Leopardstown and the 2 mile 5 novice chase, which you've already alluded to, Steve. Sadly, we just got, really fact or file lobbing around really in the end. In fact, actually watching back the race again, it's almost the case of if he had led early on, which he was restrained from doing, it would have been even less of a spectacle.
Yeah. It was a funny race to watch on course because you were looking at them and thinking how far right Gaelic Warrior was going to jump, and I don't know why everyone was just kind of concentrating on the jumps as opposed to actually seeing how well Gaelic Warrior was going.
Yeah.
And in fairness, Fact or File was also jumping to his right. Which I haven't really seen mentioned.
He's kind of
after
following
the race.
Gaelic Warrior.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, he's inexperienced over obstacles on the whole. Obviously, missing his hurdles campaign. So whether that was just because he was following Gaelic Warrior is a question mark for a horse who's now sort of 2 to 1 for the Turners and 11 to 4 for the Brown Advisory. Because if you go in at Cheltenham around 2.5 miles, 3 miles, he wouldn't want to be jumping right-handed. It was funny on course because Gaelic Warrior it was a slight mistake 4 out, but then just completely emptied. And away Mark Welsh went.
That was very disappointing from Gaelic Warrior.
It was. In fact, I started off just making it fast of a race really. That was my first guy. Something really surprised me. Now, I did this once, and I haven't checked my facts. If I'm wrong, I apologise. I did this after a glass of wine late last night. Factor File's time, I think, was 3.1 seconds faster than the 14-length winner of the handicap later in the day, who ran off 136. It's clearly a mid-140 pounder horse, carrying 23 pounds more. And if I'm right with that, I'm like, genuinely, all the other things I'm confident of, this is the last thing. Because I just wrote the race off, I thought, I ought to have at least check. I think I'm right. If that's the case, I think we're in danger of not giving him some credit here. Because he was always going to beat Gaelic Warrior I thought, because Gaelic Warrior wasn't running at all his race, which I still think is probably what he might just be very good.
I think we are talking about a real top-class horse in Factor File.
Well, in fact, time's right, that's a tremendous performance.
You watch his jumping as well. I mean, he's a strong galloper. You watch his previous run, and he's won a point-to-point. When you read through the comments for the point-to-point race, I can't find a visual of it. I did look it up to try and see it myself, but the comments were travel strongly and he makes good jumps. So it's clear that in terms of just raw ability, he's something else. So very interesting to hear you say that.
The first thing I'm going to do when I finish this is to check properly. The very last thing I did, and I want to make sure that I'm right about that. Because if that's the case, that's a heck of a time performance.
It does make me laugh in hindsight because when he was beaten by American Mike, everyone was like, "Oh, put him in the National Hunt Chase. He can't do this." And now suddenly he's going to win 3.
What should be the race for him?
I'd go Turners. I thought they're the same trip, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Personally.
11-4, non-runner, no bet for the Brown Advisory, 2-1 for the Turners. Gaelic Warrior now 5-1. After that performance, I don't
know where he's going to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it suddenly right-handed, Cheltenham? Without telling us.
Okay. Thank you, Gaelic Warrior. We'll see you, I don't know, maybe...
That performance was more than just jumping right-handed, though, wasn't it?
Yes,
he checked out rather...
completely...
So I wondered if he was disappointed. You know what I mean, mentally. I know you can put human characteristics into horses, but you know, it went by him so easily twice, didn't he? Once and then restrained, and then again. And it almost reminded me of sort of Roberto Duran getting beat, you know, sort of no mass. You know what I mean? Obviously, there'd probably be something physical, so I'm really being unfair. But there was an element of, I thought he was instantly beaten.
Yeah.
Now, if it is physical, fair enough. But it's almost like the horse, I don't know.
I'm loving the fact that Gaelic Warrior is your equine equivalent of Roberto Duran.
Yeah.
It's tremendous.
There you go.
That's wonderful. Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, who would they be?
Yeah, it'd be good.
Non-running,
no bet.
Likelihood is we'd probably see them all in individual races, boxing on their own.
You would?
Yes.
Yes, if Cheltenham had a 5-day, we would.
The Tattersall Island Novice Hurdle, won by Ballyburn. That was pretty impressive. A relentless performance. I think after the race, though, Farron Glory was found to have bled from both nostrils, so perhaps an excuse for him. But how impressed were you, Steve, by Ballyburn?
I was, again, nearly 1.5 seconds quicker than the State Man. State Man wasn't extended, and that says more about the pace, but still it was a decent time for a novice. 7 lengths winner from a good horse, a horse who I think wants further. Long way back to the third, who was rated 140. I think is rock solid. I know we're going to talk about it. For me, I would run it in the Supreme. I didn't think he was going any further away from Slate Steel with the final 100. I know he wasn't being ridden right out, but I thought the second was really sticking on in the style of the horse who does want further. Yeah. And I just don't think Ballyburn lacks pace, really. And I think he's a worthy favourite for the Supreme, personally.
Well, we'll talk about the anti-post market in just a second, but he's 6-4 non-runner no bet for the Supreme. He's 5-4 non-runner no bet for the Bear in Bingham. Would you also go Supreme?
I'd go Supreme, yeah. I was really, really impressed with this performance. I took him on with Farron Glory because I thought, Farron Glory is the solid one. He's going to run to his level, and obviously he's had an excuse afterwards. But Ballyburn's kind of lulled a few people into thinking that he was a stayer, because obviously he was beaten by Firefox over 2 miles of his reappearance when, as I've touched on earlier, a few of Willie's needed the run, and then won over 2.5 miles on soft to heavy ground. So if you look back at that, he's completely different horses, but it was kind of when Faheen won a 3-mile heavy novice hurdle at Limerick, and everyone went, well, he's not got the pace for a champion hurdle. Where this horse, he reminds me a bit, probably more like Classical Dream, I suppose, with his head carriage, and he won a Supreme from the front. Just a really, really good horse. I was, like Steve, impressed with what Slade Steele did. I thought that was a perfect trial for the Bear in Bingham. He won that Grade 2 Navan 2.5 mile novice hurdle on heavy ground. So going back up in trip with him is exactly what he wants. But yeah, I was really impressed with the first two.
It's extraordinary how the anti-post markets it's so difficult, isn't it? I mean, I'm saying here 6-4 non-runner bet for the Supreme, 5-4 for the Bear in Bingham, and we're waiting on Willie Mullins to make a decision. It's so awkward if you want to have a bet in either market.
In fairness to Bet365, they have got a market up which isn't no run or no bet, so you can get a couple of points bigger on there.
I meant more in the case of sort of Willie Mullins making the decision, because you can get, obviously, you can get the non-runner no bet, which is 6-4, 5-4, but then you can do without, it's 2-1.
In defence, if I'm often against the non-runner no bet, but I think whichever novice hurdle he goes for, I think it'll be shorter than those price.
Yeah,
I could see the Supreme, like I can see a lot of races at Cheltenham. It's possible the Supreme would be 8-9 runners. It has been, it could be, of which Willie might have 2 or 3, and the same applies to the other race. And if I said to you, do you think it's at all possible he could be odds on? I think it's hard to argue. He might, he could easily be. Yeah. So I don't think the 6-4 non-runner no bet in the Supreme was a terrible price. I don't think he'd be bigger than 6-4 if he ran it. That's what I mean. I think long-windedly way of putting it.
Yeah, I'd like a little bit more info from Willie Mullins, other than saying that he's going to wait till hours before the race.
Will do, won't he? Yeah.
Declaration time. Okay, to another Willie Mullins trained runner in the Dublin Chase, El Fabiolo. He's beaten Dino Blue by a country mile. I mean, he's 2-5, non-runner bet for the Champion Chase. The tone of my voice, I hope, is lending to the sentiment behind the performance, which is professional, well done, great stuff, and the way that the Champion Chase is shaping up. Am I being unfair?
I think so. I was really impressed with his performance. I've never been all in on El Fabiolo. I've always kind of been in the John Bond camp and always thought El Fabiolo was slightly vulnerable with his jumping frailties, but this was probably the best he's jumped. He made a slight mistake, I think, at the 4th. But other than that, he's just got so much scope. He kind of bulldozes through them. I thought it was impressive. I thought Dino Blue would give him a race in receipt of £7. The fact that bookmakers cut her into 11-10 for the Mares Chase afterwards, after being beaten 8.5 lengths, kind of says it all, really.
Yeah.
I thought El Fabiolo was absolutely brilliant. On the topic of this, I think if we talk around kind of the bypassing of fences and the hurdles on the day, if I can.
Please, because obviously it then refers to the next race we talk about, which is the Irish Champion Hurdle, where they also did something similar.
Yeah, so it was the first time I'd ever been on a course, and I think from speaking to others that anyone's ever seen it, that it was a last-minute decision on the course on whether they'd take out the hurdles and fences.
During the race.
During the race. Yeah. And there was actually a guy there putting up the bypass, then the sun would go in and he'd take it down, and it was absolutely bizarre. I do understand why in-running punters, if you're laying El Fabiolo at 1.03 thinking he's got 2 to jump and actually he's just sailed over the last, I can understand that. But as a spectacle, we always want fences and hurdles jumped. So as long as they've announced that to the jockeys, and they probably should have done to the punters. I was on course, I'd never heard an announcement saying that this is a possibility, which probably is a bit naughty. But I'd be for it.
I must admit, I'd be against it. I mean, the commentator, you can imagine Jerry Hannon as they go out on the first circuit and goes, they jump the hurdle, that might be the last next time around. It's that. It's that uncertain. If you start a race, you want certain factors that are
Okay, yeah.
You wouldn't want, for example, them to go, okay, so the race is 1.25 miles or 2 miles, but they might put the winning post back a little bit if there's
That's
something.
not the same.
Well, it is. You're taking away an element of fixed before the start of the race. And before the race is off, they're going to jump 8 hurdles, and then during the race, it might be 8, it might be 7.
Playing devil's advocate or supporting Steve's argument is that the intent, I guess, is to try and jump the thing, and that's not bad. I think you could argue occasionally it's done a bit too prematurely.
Well, it's either done or not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Life isn't always like that, Rish.
Well, that's the point of the certainty before the race.
You want certainties in life.
Well, if you're going to be a punter, you don't want something that's a variable during the race. That's unnecessary.
And as long as you knew that before the race, that's where it does kind of, and this might have just been a trial, and the first time that they've done it, I think they do need to announce it that this is going to be a variable throughout the race.
Yeah,
I still find it extraordinary.
Okay, good. Yeah, fair enough.
You're in favour of it?
No, I'm not giving it much thought. I'm just as persuaded by Steve's argument as I am of yours. So I'll still sit on the fence.
I'm sure we've
sit on the fence. You sure that you're going to be sitting on the fence because they might remove that fence?
Well, then in which case I'll be unlucky, won't I? But then I'll accept it because I think life, you can be unlucky in life. That's why I don't like VAR. That's why I don't like VAR. You see.
Yeah, that's another.
Don't start on that.
Yeah, that's another story. What's
wrong with being unlucky is what I'm asking. It's life.
I've managed my whole life. So.
Oof, I wish.
I mean, I don't think it would happen. It certainly hasn't happened here where they make a decision.
No.
In the UK during the race.
But we have also, I'm sure we've all been on course and they've emitted for low sun and then the sun goes in.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, well, why aren't they jumping these?
Yeah.
And this kind of gives them the option to put them back in during the race.
And also those punters you're talking about who had a bet in the morning on a 24 chase race and a 3.5 mile chase.
Yeah.
You could argue they're being disadvantaged by it turning out to be a 3.25 mile hurdle.
It was the old Rome, wasn't it, this year that was a joke? They
Absolutely.
I think
if there's X number of fences lost, I think the race shouldn't take place.
Yeah, fair point.
Personally.
Do you remember Stormez?
Yes, I do.
Stormez?
I do at Cheltenham.
If you knew before the race,
absolutely,
that they were definitely removing 4 fences,
yeah.
Right, you back Stormez. But if halfway through the race they go, oh, the sun's coming, let's put those 4 fences back. Hang on, I've backed Stormez.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true. That is true.
Yeah. Anyway.
You're unlucky.
One for another day, no doubt. If it ever happens over here, I'm not so sure. But, we shall see in time. The Irish Champion Hurdle, where because the same sort of comments apply later on.
Yeah.
But State Man, Steve, very good. Very good again.
Very good.
What's the story with regards to State Man's chances in the Champion Hurdle? How do you see it? Non-runner, no bet. He is 11-4 against Constitution.
I'll say what I said to you in the car and what I heard on ATR to prove I'm not biased for my channel. I heard Patrick Mullins been interviewed about a month ago, and after he won the race over Christmas, in fact, and they said to him, "Do you think State Man can ever beat Constitution Hill?" And he said, "If the Constitution Hill who won the Supreme, which I rode in, turned up, no." He said they went a really strong pace and he just kept going and going and going. He thought it was incredible. He said, if the Constitution Hill who won at Aintree last year turned up, then it might be another matter. And I think that's a good idea, because I think it's like the assumption from all of us, and I love the horse, so I really hope it is right. The assumption is Constitution Hill is going to turn out to be every bit as good as he's ever been. Kempton didn't prove anything. It just proved that he's alive and, you know, he's miles better than the other and he won. We're not going to see him beforehand, and he probably will. But what State Man will bring to the table is, I think he's a little bit better than last year, and he is so likeable. He's so straightforward. Sometimes he makes the run, or he has done. Other times he'll take a lead. He seems completely unfussed by the tactics. Didn't go that quick this weekend. He jumps, efficiently. I think he must be a joy to ride. He just does what you want. Now, can he beat an absolute top class Constitution Hill? Probably not. But it's not guaranteed, isn't it, racing? Some horses, we might have seen the best of Constitution Hill till proved otherwise. We might have done. You know, and it is fantastic what he's achieved, but it's not guaranteed he'll be like that again this year.
I thought the performance of State Man in the Irish Champion Hurdle suggested that Constitution Hill will have his biggest equine test come the Champion Hurdle. Do you agree with that?
He's the ultimate professional now. Steve said, he settles, he jumps, he travels. It's going to be interesting, the tactics on it. And I went back and looked at, he won this obviously second year in a row, 8th grade 1. He's just solid, he's just a winning machine. I'm glad that Darryl Jacob did something different.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
in Pere Pass, if he'd have tracked him round again and he'd finished second, you'd have gone, well, what was the point in doing that?
Yeah.
He hated making the run-in, which for the time figures, obviously you mentioned the times with Ballyburn earlier, I wouldn't use that as a stick to beat State Man with.
No, nor me.
He just hated making the run-in. But Bob Ollinger ran a lot better. You were on the show, you'd give him a shout. And I was really against him, but he travelled, and for a brief moment, approaching the omitted last, you thought, oh, we might have a race here. But yeah, I thought State Man was brilliant. It's going to be interesting to see what they do tactics-wise in the Champion Hurdle, because last year they tracked him and never got near him. So whether they'll set off in front this year and make Constitution Hill go past is another question. But yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Champion Hurdle
Me too.
much more now
Me
than
too.
I was prior to the Dublin Racing Festival.
Especially if Lossymouth turns up as well.
6-1, non-runner, no bet.
No chance he'll turn up.
Even if this turns into a 3-horse race,
No,
I'm still really
This is
looking
fascinating.
forward to it.
I agree.
Now it's a race. Constitution Hill,
I agree.
I think, now has to go deep in the race. I can't imagine he'll lob round the way he did last year.
I think it's a very dangerous assumption in horse racing to assume that something will always be repeated. That's all I was trying to say. And don't get me wrong, it's not a criticism. I think he's a brilliant horse, Constitution Hill. But the 4 to 11 or whatever he is assumes he's the same horse, exactly the same horse, right at his best. Might be. Probably is.
If State Man's in front of him, the one thing with Constitution Hill, he's millimetres away from disaster with his jumping.
Yeah.
So if he does end up getting a little bit under pressure, if State Man is ahead of him and Nico thinks, oh, I've got to start going here, he's millimetres from disaster.
The beauty about, you both love sport as well as just horse racing, and there's always a Buster Douglas around the corner every time.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson, every time he went in the ring, you thought, wow, this
Absolutely.
is straightforward.
Absolutely.
But you just never know. So
No.
the excitement actually has built for the Champion Hurdle following what we saw from State Man on the weekend. Lots of other performances that we can reflect on over the last week or so, but I'll just pick out a few to kick things off. I want to mention the Grade 1 Scilly Isles, Steve. You gave a positive mention to Nickelback, who produced an outstanding performance. wonderful to watch in terms of the way he ran, jumped, raced with that zest over that distance.
Yeah, it was great for smaller connections. James Beston and Sarah Humphrey, obviously first Grade 1 winners. I thought he was brilliant. I said on the show last week, I thought the railway fences would really suit him, because if he could get away at that point, he'll be hard to peg back, and that was the case. I think they're going to skip Cheltenham, head to Aintree, which I think is the right thing to do. And yeah, I thought it was a brilliant performance. I'll leave the rest of the UK stuff to Steve. I think a few of the other Irish ones, Maxim obviously won that listed handicap hurdle. I don't have a good relationship with this horse. I got him beat on a stable debut off a marker 99, and then he wins this off 137. Absolute mad. I thought Madara was good in the handicap chase. Obviously good for Sophie Leach, proving that UK runners can go over there to win.
Lovely.
Likely to head to the plate next, but if it come up heavy on the day, he could go for the Grand Annual over 2. He does shape like a stay-in trip, would suit him. I think James Reevely would keep the ride if that going forward. I was impressed with the bumper winner, the Emmett Mullins, Jerobo Machine. Came there swinging under Derek O'Connor. Is now 3-1, no run and no bet for the champion bumper. I was really impressed with that. He'd beaten the ill-fated DB Cooper in a Fairy House bumper. So yeah, that looked strong form going into it, and I didn't think Patrick or John Gleeson gave their mounts the best of rides in that bumper, but I don't think it mattered in the end. Percival Lagawara, I backed for that handicap chase on the Sunday.
Sob story.
I think was coming there to win the race. He's now shortened for the Kim Muir. Just to poke me a little bit further. And I thought Zenta also travelled well in that handicap hurdle. I thought she ran well, didn't quite get home. She obviously got good juvenile form last year with Lossy Mouth and Gala Marseille, so could be one to keep an eye on for one of the handicaps at the Cheltenham Festival.
Okay. Steve, some performances in Britain?
I'll mention too. I thought, this is after the event, but it is after the event, but it is what I thought at the time. I thought Jinko Blue, the handicapper, had taken a chance with 1-2-4, given the style of his win at Newbury, second to run all right in a graded race next time out, and the fact that Nicky Henderson has entered in the novice hurdles. Anyway, he duly proved he was much better than 1-2-4. He's certainly a mid-130s horse. Yeah. Whether he's any more than that, I don't know, but I thought that was an opportunity well taken by the trainer. The horse I liked most of around Britain over the weekend was Affodil, who I just thought won with a lot in hand. And that's only a length and a half, but I thought it was still taking a pull before the last. And I love horses like that, because I think in big field handicaps, having a cruising speed is important, because you can get out a little bit of trouble. And I just think he's got a really big handicap. I'd love him to get in the county hurdle. 2 out to 1 out, it would really suit him.
He's produced a couple of performances. That one at Mossaborough, the one at Ayr at the back end of last season, where he sort of seduces you into thinking there's even more there, that you just
definitely
the right circumstances.
I said to you before that I can't prove it, and it's just a theory I've had for about 15 years. I do, and Paul Nicholls, to be fair, has said the same thing. I think often the horses come from France and they're better in their second season. I don't, acclimatised. I don't know what it is, but maybe just get used to a new setup. But I think the Affodil we're seeing now is what he threatened to be last year, and I thought both his run over 2.5 miles over Christmas, which is too far for him, and then this run, I thought confirmed. And he's a really good trainer at exploiting that sort of thing. He got up, I didn't realise Steve told me he got up 5. So he's 129. So whether he gets in races at the moment might be a problem, but I'd be very surprised if he ends up a mid-140s horse.
But if he doesn't get into the county, at least with 129, you kind of think he could still make the grade. He's got a few pounds in hand of 129.
I think he's got quite a lot in hand, because I think he's starting to go the right way. I think they've worked out how to ride him as well. I liked him.
Liari, I mentioned Liari, who won the Scottish Triumph Hurdle. That was impressive performance. One other performance I mentioned, I don't know if either of you saw it, but Sandown, I loved Harper's Brook. I know Harper's Brook is not the most reliable.
You do love a horse like that, though, Rishi. You do.
Didn't he jump and travel around Sandown like an absolute...
He did at Ascot.
Yeah, I know. And he stopped like if he was stopping off for a quick cup of tea. But he actually didn't run too badly from the line. I mean, obviously helped the way things fell off. But his jumping around Sandown was superb.
If I could have had a bet here today that one of us would particularly like
I'm a sucker.
Harper's Brook,
I'm a sucker for a horse like Harper's Brook. Okay, that is enough of recap, because we've got still a lot to look forward to in today's Racing Weekly. Before we get into our weekend preview, just to let you know that our sponsor Bet365 have an ITV Racing price promise. They'll not be beaten on price for any horse for all UK and Irish races shown live on ITV Racing. Full T's and C's can be found on the website. And we also have exciting news to share with you. We will be hosting a live Cheltenham preview evening at the King George pub in Chiswick on the 6th of March, where we have top guests, including Gavin Lynch, Willie Twiston-Davies, joining myself and Steve Ryder. Details of how to get hold of tickets will, of course, be announced shortly. But put that date in your diary, the 6th of March, the King George pub in Chiswick for the Racing Weekly Cheltenham preview evening. It's time to look ahead to what we've got this weekend. Obviously, it's the last of the really major trials in the UK at Newbury. There's the Denman Chase, the Game Spirit, the Betfair Hurdle, all good races, but of course, differing types of markets for those races. Let's start with the Denman Chase, if we can, Steve. There are 5 entries. Shishkin is £7 clear of Protectorat, and then they're both miles clear of the other 3 horses, Hitman, Sam Brown, and Does He Know? Straightforward?
It should be, if he starts, it should be. I mean, you don't want to doubt when they haven't, but he didn't do anything wrong last time. And yeah, this looks a really good opportunity. I expect Hitman might run a bit better than last time. I think Paul Rickle was saying, to be fair, beforehand, that he thought he'd need to run. And he has run a bit like, he hasn't run awful. He has got a lot of ability. I'm not sure I trust Protectorate, but I'm pretty sure I don't entirely. So it's a good chance for Shishkin, yes, clearly.
The start of the 2 mile, 7.5 furlong is sort of halfway down the back straight at Newbury, so in order to get back to the stables, he will have to run round somewhere. So kind of hoping that it won't bother him at the start.
Yeah, Shishkin is obviously the one to beat. He was going to win the King George, and yeah, it does make me laugh that the fact that everyone was worrying that he wouldn't start, and now he's 1-3 to win a race against anti-post. Like you would be brave backing him at that price. We've also got to touch on the weather. There's a lot of rain forecast this week heading into Newbury, and Shishkin's been a non-runner on account of the ground 3 or 4 times. So you'd be a brave person to be backing 1-3 currently. That makes Protectorat the one for me at 4-1. Whisper it quietly, but 4-1, quarter the odds, 2 places. You could do worse than backing him each way. I thought I was really impressed with his run last time. I'd kind of forgotten the horse and given up on him after his run in the Betfair Chase. But if you look back at the run with L'Impresse, he was giving him £4 that day and was still right in contention after up until the last. So there's no reason that Newbury shouldn't suit him. He's got a stone in hand over Hitman as well. So yeah, I think Protectorat at 4-1 is very fair.
I thought, in fairness, I'm of more your opinion. The last 2 runs after Haydock have been better. He was brought back a little bit at Cheltenham when he carried top weight. That was better. Yeah. And obviously up against L'Impresse giving weight last time out. L'Impresse probably the best British hope for the Gold Cup, I'd say. So not a bad effort.
Or Shishkin. Given your love of rogues, I thought Shishkin would have gone massively up in your estimation after refusing to run. I think you'd now be all over him.
No, because no, I can't trust him.
Right.
I mean, but it'd be interesting to see how it goes. Yeah, no, Shishkin obviously, Gold Cup. Personally, I kind of prefer L'Impresse for the Gold Cup.
Okay.
More reliable.
Fair enough.
The Game Spirit Chase, again, 6 entries in here. Edwardstone, Etait Temps, Boot Hill, Calico, Amarillo Sky, and Funambule Civila. The 2 top-rated horses in the race are Edwardstone and Etait Temps, but they both come in here off the back of poor performances, or disappointing performances. And obviously, Boot Hill, who was favourite for the race, he fell last time. How do you play it?
I think it's a really interesting race. Etait Temps, I couldn't trust on what he's achieved this year. At least he's going the right way round in this, though. I think Edwardstone and Boot Hill are both better going right-handed. Everyone that's listened to the show previously knows how big of a fan of Edwardstone I was, and I thought going up in trip would really suit him, but yeah, I was really disappointed last time. I think with these conditions, I think probably the way to go is definitely Funambule Civila. Won the race for the past 2 seasons. Interestingly, that's the only times that he has won in those 2 years. Both of those are on good and good to soft ground. but he has won twice on soft ground, including at this course and distance. He finished second in a soft ground champion chase behind Energumene as well. So if it turns up soft on the day, he'll handle it. He likes the track. I think 9-2 is very, very fair.
All right. Boot Hill 7-4, Everstone 2s, Finlandville Civilla 9-2. Steve, how do you play it?
Not got a strong view, other than I think Boot Hill is a slightly odd favourite. He's got 3 of the opponents and races are more highly rated than him. So, and as also Steve said, whether he wants to go this way round anyway, I don't know. But I don't know. That's my first. When I saw him, I thought, I don't know. Wouldn't mind taking him on. I don't really know what I'd take him on with, so I'll sit it out. I just think he's a vulnerable favourite.
Okay. I mean, Amarillo Sky, I know he's got a bit to find, but he actually got a good record at Newbury.
Yeah.
If he can get back to his best, I wouldn't rule out potential of an upset. It's a funny race. Not one that I'm going to get too heavily involved in. However, what about the Betfair Hurdle? It is. I was looking through the race, trying to find a horse that I think had loads of upside according to handicap mark. Didn't appear to be obvious ones or ones crying out. Obviously, the horse at the top of the market, you're taking your chance as to where he currently. Castle Des Mottes, who hasn't had a run yet for Willie Mullins. Useful form in France. Most of it come on very soft or heavy ground, so that might play into their hands come the weekend. 5-1. Iberico Lord 7-1. Under Control 8s. Second run back after the wind up. Good run last time. Brentford Hope 10s. Go Dante 10s. Altabelli 11s. Look Away 11s. Lucia 12s. Tell Her the Name 12s. Okay, so that's the top of the market. Who are the horses that you want to narrow down? And do you think of these that you're going to narrow down, do you think they have a fair bit in hand to play with?
I think the race would suit Brentford Hope. I think a strongly run race, I'm imagining it'd be a strongly run race, I think would play to youthful flat racers, and he's quality on the flat that he used to cruise through races. So I think he's a bit better than he showed at Newbury last time out, and that was still a good run. The Under Control ran really well when second in the mare's race at Doncaster. Was it Doncaster? Thought that was a good run. But I am a fully paid up fan of Iberico Lord. I think the Greatwood has worked out better than almost any other major handicap hurdle this year. It's worked out fantastic. I think an £8 rise is fine. I think the only thing that beat him last time out for me was that the ground went good. I think he wants soft ground. If the rain comes, particularly the top end of the rain, and we get to proper soft ground, I think he must run well, personally. If he doesn't, then I think JP McManus has got a good chance with Under Control as well.
Okay. Under Control was one I thought did have a little bit of scope for where she is in the handicap. And she's had that she had the wind up, finished second behind Ashrow Diamond, second run back after wind up. So lots of positives. Yeah,
and I really like that race at Doncaster. I'm a big fan of Galopin, so I think she'll run well in a mare's hurdle back up in trip. So yeah, I completely see the case for those. On Castle Des Mottes, it's really interesting. This is Irish handicapper versus UK handicapper. The Irish handicapper has given him a mark of 139. The UK handicapper has given him a mark of 133. Well, that's often the other way round. Normally when these Irish horses come over, obviously the UK handicapper puts a few pounds on. So somehow they're £6 adrift, and it's kind of the different way round. So I can see why he's been supported since those handicap marks have come out. The one at a massive price, if it is to come up soft on the day, would be Favour for me. Won a soft ground county hurdle just under a year ago off a mark of 134, only £3 higher in this race. Ran okay at Ascot to finish second, beaten sort of just under 3 lengths on his penultimate start, and then disappointed at Ascot last time on good ground. I think if the rain does arrive, a bit of softer ground, that will definitely suit him. And yeah, he's about 33-1, I think. So you can make a case for him. A lot of times with these Skelton horses, you think that the market's going to get it right, but he won a county hurdle at 33s, 40s. So he's one of the yard runners that sometimes the market doesn't know everything.
Okay. Look Away, another horse that I really like. I expect him to be involved, but I think there'll be one or two probably with a little bit more up their sleeve than he does, because he's pretty honest and you've seen it all there. I thought Tell Her the Name was an interesting runner, depending on what happens with regards to the ground. Obviously, what happened at Aintree was very disappointing, but pulled up and then came back out pretty quickly after that and won at Huntingdon. And prior to that, the run with Django Bay was pretty good. and novices don't have a bad record
No,
in the
don't.
race. So
They don't.
I'll keep that horse in mind. But nothing strong yet. Those are the way I'm looking at it. Is there anything else running over the weekend? There's obviously racing at Warwick as well. There's the Kingmaker, that Mares Hurdle, and the Veterans Chase also. That takes your...
I thought the tracker suit Matata would have been the
Kingmaker.
Yeah, I just think with the fences coming on, I think, again, he's a bold front runner. I think that will suit. I think he can run well. No real in the listed, and I'm in a small minority. Although they're a great innovation, and they are, I rarely get involved in a Veterans Chase. The horses I like are horses, novices on the way up, thing that floats my boat from my interest. So there's not anything wrong. They are a great success, and it gives horses a second career. It's not, another one of my moans. It's just a races that I personally don't find interesting.
Okay. Matata, obviously, short for the Kingmaker Novices Chase. You wear it well, short for the listed Mares Hurdle. Do your job, though, who's favourite for the Veterans Chase at Warwick. There's been a change of tack by Mark Dunphy, the owner.
Yeah, I just spotted it when I had a look. It transferred from Lucinda Russell to Charlie Longston, and I clicked into the owner's entries, and they've all moved yards, which is something to bear in mind, seeing as he kind of was back to form last time. So if you're backing the anti-post favourite, just bear in mind that he has had a stable switch within the last few weeks or so.
Yeah.
Which is,
So is there anything else that you think worthy of a...
I thought You Wear It Well would prove hard to beat in that listed race. I don't think she got 3 miles last time, so the drop back in trip will definitely suit her. So I thought she'd probably take a bit of beating. There's a couple tomorrow, dependent on when you're obviously listening to this, to note for the Cheltenham Festival. Corbett's Cross runs over 3 miles at Fairy House tomorrow under Derek O'Connor, so that gives the impression that the National Hunt Chase is obviously the target for him. He's around 4-1 for that race with Bet365, so just keep an eye on how he goes. And then Lark in the Morning is another one, just to have a look. Runs in a novice hurdle against his elders at Fairy House. There's definitely going to be an eye on the Boodles. He's about 7-1 with Bet365 for that, so I can't imagine he's going to be getting too close to the front.
Yeah.
But yeah, just keep an eye on how he jumped poorly last time, but he was also settled about 10th in a big field last time. So I'd want to see him jump a bit better for him to justify kind of a single figure price for the Boodles.
I'm going to mention one at Warwick on Saturday. It's the 2 mile handicap hurdle. Vicky Vale is coming back in trip for the first time this season. She's been running over 2 miles. She actually ran over 2 mile 5, 2 mile 4, 2 mile 3. I think she's a 2 miler. She's only rated 122. She's jumped a bit left, which wouldn't have suited her on a couple of occasions, but obviously at Warwick it shouldn't be an issue. I think 122, strongly run 2 mile race. I was looking through some of the opposition. I'd be very disappointed if she doesn't go close to winning that off a mark of 122. She towed them along in the Challow last year and then got very tired, and definitely think 2.5 miles, 2 miles 5, too far for her. But a strongly run 2 miles up her street and 122 scope off that mark in the 2 mile handicap hurdle at Warwick on Saturday. Okay, so that has been our weekend preview. And before we get into our best bets of the weekend, just to let you know of a free-to-play 6 horses challenge. It's available every weekend with prize pools available for 5 and 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6. T's and C's apply. So it's time for Steve and Steve to give their best selections of the weekend. So Steve, as our guest, you get first go.
Okay, given with the proviso that the ground is soft or softer, I like Iberico Lord, particularly like it each way, to be honest, in the Betfair. I just think he's still think he's got unfinished business. I thought he was an impressive winner of a very good Greatwood this year. So that would be for me. I would jump ship or be less keen if the ground wasn't tested. I do think he wants to get to have soft ground. Okay,
Iberico Lord for Steve. And Steve?
I think fourth one's very fair about Protectorat, but my best bet of the weekend would be Fernambull Civila in the game Spirit at 9-2. I just think there's question marks around Editor Gite on what he's achieved so far this season, and then I think Boot Hill and Edward Stone are both better going right-handed. Won the last 2 runnings of this, will be absolutely fine on soft ground. Outrun odds of 40-1 to finish second in a soft ground champion chase. I think there's very little question marks around Fernambull Civila, where you have got with his opponents.
Brilliant. So Funambul Civiler in the game spirit for Steve Ryder and for Steve Mellish. Iberico Lord with the proviso that we get plenty of rain, making it a proper test in soft ground in the Betfair Hurdle. Well, that is it for this edition of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Steve, just before we go, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Will you be at Cheltenham this year? Will you be observing from a distance?
Yeah, the distance varies between, I have to measure it from where I live to Cheltenham or from the studio to Cheltenham. No, I to be honest, I love watching on television. I've been loads and loads of Cheltenham and it's fantastic, but it's so crowded. I personally prefer to watch the racing on television, and you can watch replays straight away and all that. So in the comfort of my own home, Rishi, but I will certainly be glued to it.
Lovely. No racing for you this weekend, or you?
Not this
after
weekend.
the Dublin Racing Festival has dragged it out of you.
Yeah.
You need a detox.
Definitely a bit of a detox.
Okay. Well, thank you both for today. It's been a lot of fun. As always, if you like what you've heard or watched on this or any of our previous episodes, leave us a kind review on the Apple podcast or in the comments section on YouTube. And thank you for all the comments that we're getting on YouTube, including the guy who says, if it wasn't for the Joker in the middle, then I'd really be enjoying this. And immediately it came to my mind, this is clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right, here I am, stuck in the middle with you. We'll be back next week where we're joined by Kate Tracy to have a look forward to the Ascot Chase and the Kingwell Hurdle. But between now and then, go well, and thank you for joining us on Racing Weekly.